Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, the podcast where conversations about wealth go deeper. This isn't about flashy success or one-size-fits-all advice. It's about real people designing financial lives that align with who they are, what they value, and the legacies they're building. We bring together voices from business, finance, law, and leadership to talk about the moments that shape them and the strategies that sustain them. Here is your host, Chris Everett.
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, where money meets meaning and purpose. You know, most nonprofits think their technology problem is the software. It almost never is. Today's guest has spent more than 30 years inside the nonprofit technology sector, including senior leadership roles at Blackbaud across product management, engineering, sales and engineering, and solution architecture. He has watched thousands of organizations invest significantly in platforms, then struggled not because the software failed them, but because of adoption or operational discipline, the data quality and clarity in decision making. He's the founder and president of IBW Solutions, a consulting practice serving nonprofit leaders and the vendors that work with them. His approach is vendor neutral, assignment first, and grounded in a conviction that the real work is not choosing the right platform, it is building the operational discipline, the governance, and the clarity that make any platform perform. So today we're exploring what 3 decades inside nonprofit technology teaches you about why organizations fail to get value from their investments, what executive-grade data strategy actually looks like for a nonprofit, and what the financial architecture of building an independent consulting practice after a career at Blackbaud actually requires. So please join me in welcoming Bill Walsh. Bill, welcome to Beyond the Numbers.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here and to be joining you. It's wonderful to see you bringing different voices and faces for interesting conversation, and I'm happy to be a guest with you today.
Well, I appreciate that, Bill. That's what we're attempting to do. So let's start with the pattern. You described witnessing it consistently across 30 years. Organizations invest significantly in platforms, and the real challenges are really not the technology features, but it's the adoption, the operational discipline, the data quality, and the decision-making clarity. So why do nonprofits keep misidentifying where the problem actually is, and what does it really cost them when they do?
So let's tackle that and kind of break it down. And first, no one intentionally does anything, right? I mean, for the reminder, change is hard, technology is hard, and it's
Right.
difficult to translate into functional, useful systems. And it's not just nonprofits that struggle with that. It's businesses as well, which is how do I take an ever-changing world, a dynamic world of software, tools, and technology, and an ever-changing sort of team of people and trying to solve and tackle that problem and get those things to marry. And I think it's that bridging function is kind of one of the things that I think about, which is the problem statement, the person statement, the process statement, the customer. How do I link all of those things together? And nonprofits struggle because they don't always have the resources, they don't always have the systems, they don't always have the tools and the budgets to solve problems potentially the way that an enterprise does. And they're typically constantly stressed by that sense of I just need to make do with what I have and do the best that I can. And that often serves them well in sort of a scrappy sort of way of scrounging and getting things done. But it can lead to that sense of challenge, Chris, where you think about where is it time to do better? And where do I need to sort of not accept that status quo or that sense that it's not good enough? And where do I need to really put the pedal to the metal and make change? And you brought up things like the data quality. Is it good enough that I imported a file of 1,000 $5 gifts from a text to give campaign and they mostly matched my donor base, but they didn't quite. So maybe I imported 1,000 names and 100 duplicates came in because the resolution wasn't quite perfect. Is that okay because it's just a few extra $5 donors? Or do I need those $5 donors linked back to the $100 donors so I can do a better job of stewardship? And that's the kind of challenge a nonprofits would face every week. How how do I operate, do the best that I can, make the best decisions that I can, and where do I invest my time, effort, and resources to overcoming that? Does that make a little bit of sense?
It does, and frankly, I see it in financial planning too. Most people think that they have an investment problem when they really have a financial architecture problem. Maybe they're focused on the return of their portfolio when the real issue is that there's no structure connecting their financial resources to what they actually want to achieve. And changing the platform doesn't fix that. Building the right structure actually does.
And thinking about what you want to accomplish and being
Yeah.
consistent in that pattern, in a world that's constantly competing for our attention with something new and a new priority as well, right? And I would probably draw an analogy between a nonprofit and an individual facing those financial challenges, right? They're constantly faced with something new. You should be investing in annuities. You should be looking at dividend stocks. What's the latest and greatest? And for nonprofits, it's is major gifts your growth plan? Are you looking at plan gifts? Is that a growth strategy for you? Where are you thinking your energy should be directed in order to target and direct the best outcome? And how do I decide which of those things is the most important right now in order to
Yeah.
achieve something?
Hey, Bill, and with all the AI and all the voices coming at you, it's almost like, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. How do you stop all that noise, right?
And on that point, I think that's really up to the executive leadership team. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a positive way. And that
Yeah.
is be consistent in your goals and directive, be a consistent voice of leadership, pick your top three things that you're going to focus on and help the team stay aligned towards those goals and objectives. Pretty straightforward and simple advice, right? And then as something new is coming along, whether it's AI or a new initiative, how does that fit into where things are today? And if you decide to make a change, understand that that impacts the choices you've already made to date. I'm dealing with that right now with one of my projects. It's sort of like you can have that, but what is it you want to give up instead in order to make that change?
Oh, that's really good because, in a sense, it's like you want to help them unlock what they already have before they take on the new. Like, what do you find when you do a comprehensive assessment? How do you help a leadership team that's been told their problems are the platform and they see that and and then you see that the platform may not even be the problem?
That's a good one. And I try to take a little bit of a look at the operational state first, and just assess a little bit of the mechanics and the facts. So, how much data do they have? What are their existing processes?
Mm,
What's working well? I often will have a conversation about what were your last three initiatives and how well did they go? And what I'm starting to look for across those two things is there alignment? So, the way your systems are operating and the way you're talking are coming together. Or am I seeing some disconnects? And am I sensing what we just talked through, which is a sense of too much churn and too much change?
mm.
So they started a challenge, they started an initiative and then left it unfinished. So, in a nonprofit space, I would be looking into their annual fund and operations and how well those are tracked and what's the consistency of the communication stream, the messaging stream, the ingestion back of the outputs and the gifts and the engagement. What were the goals that they set? Do they think about fundraising primarily, or do they also think about engagement goals and outcomes? And what are they really trying to achieve? And is the executive team aligned with the operational team, aligned with the data that's coming in? And I'm really just looking to see, is there a gap somewhere in that process where a technology shift would make a generational shift. So it could be that it's a communication tool might provide some improvement. But a lot of times, what I tend to see is people jump on the leap and say, vendor X is promising us this with a lift in email open rates or connection rates or engagement vectors or the better CRM for fundraising. And in all of those cases, the tools they already have with a better direction and a better connection in the process would probably be a better investment at a lower cost with a much faster outcome than switching the system that they already have in place. And
It's
I'm just kind of walking you through what I tend to see, which is the panacea is I'm going to switch the system. And that
mm,
is often, sadly, putting the new system in place over the old process, and the old process was broken.
Yeah, yeah. It's like they know what they know. Maybe they know what they don't know. But then there's that broad range of everything else where they don't even know what they don't even know. They're about to press a lever and it's going to maybe not blow everything up, but not produce what they were anticipating for sure because the strategy was missing, the
And
understanding.
the strategy or the understanding.
Yeah.
Let's double back to that piece because it takes time and effort, and you're in the bubble, right? If you think about a lot
Yep.
of times as a consultant, I'm coming in from outside. I'm empowered to ask questions. I'm a naturally curious and inquisitive person anyway. So I'm just going to be asking questions. And sometimes the people in place already know a lot of those answers, or they have re asked themselves, where they haven't given themselves permission to be honest and open about some of those answers in a while. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's kind of like, yeah, we all knew that's broken, but we don't talk about it anymore.
Well,
So you
actually, it
have,
reminds me of my time on boards of non-for-profits where, the director comes prepared for whatever is going on, but now we have all these other ears and eyes listening and bringing new questions to the table that can either be helpful or not helpful, but it's another set of eyes and ears, and you need that, especially in not-for-profits where you're trying to do so many things at the same time, I think.
I think so too, and it's both. We just talked through two sort of different angles, right? Which is set some clarity of goals and then stick with them. But we're also talking about challenge how those goals are achieved
That's it.
and don't be afraid to ask questions. So I don't want to speak out of both sides of our mouths with this, but they both are complementary. How did we solve that before? What went well? What didn't go well? What would we be doing differently? Maybe the answer is it's great. And if that's true, accept it and find something else to look into. And there's another rock that you might look under and say there's a problem. But most of the time, each process could have a little bit of improvement.
Yeah, I think some of what you describe makes me think of, when I try to assimilate some of what you're saying into my own practice, the person who's been inside the financial services industry and they understand how products are built, how they're priced and sold, is the one that can generally most clearly see where the incentives are misaligned with the client's actual interest. It's like they have a hammer, and so everybody looks like a nail. But it's that inside knowledge that changes the quality of the advice and makes vendor neutral independence the result, where you're really listening to someone, hearing what they say, but trying to also listen for what they can't even hear or understand yet, pushing them enough to get the missing piece of information that's so necessary to really put a solid foundation under them.
You know what I love about what you just said, Chris, is the degree of trust
Yeah,
that's required because nonprofits are inherently a trusting group of people. They expect people to deal with them openly, honestly, and fairly. And I think the same is true in your world, where the expectation for financial advice, open, true, fair, honest, and yet in both cases, that isn't always the way the world shapes out. And the downstream impact for a nonprofit might be a loss of trust with a donor or a challenge with a board member or some of those. But in your world, that loss of trust, not for you, but for others in your industry, is the loss of dollars in someone's pocket for the future, right?
yeah,
So it's just such a significant impact, and it's so personal. If I was coming to you for advice, I want to know that I trust you, right?
yeah. Hey, honey, let me tell you, when I was inside, let's call it under the thumb of an organization telling me what to do in financial services, one of the reasons I left and became an independent fiduciary was because the client was rarely first. And that broke my heart. And so when you
Yep.
step out on your own and the only one you're accountable to, aside from the Lord and the client you're dealing with, it just changes everything. And now it brings forward the real understanding so that any actionable items that you need to make or the client needs to make are a true fit. I think that true fit is what's missing because too many advisors have fee breath or commission breath, and that's just crazy making to me.
it's an interesting dichotomy. So first, sharing back, and I appreciated your introduction. I've lived through that, right? I worked for a corporation that started as a $3 million to a $20 million to a $100 million to $1 billion company, and I watched that change and evolve. And
Huge.
their fiduciary responsibility is to their shareholders and not to their employees nor to their customers. And I
Yeah.
saw the downstream impacts of that as well, as I became out on my own, and I realized it is all up to me. And what I deliver is my word. How
Yeah.
can I live into that? And now it's personal, and it's not as much, in addition to being professional. So clients might come to me and they say, I just want to work with you because I trust you, Bill, because your
Yeah.
name is is what matters. But on the flip side, it's just me. So how would I scale that to meet a larger problem and still deliver to that trust? And so I would say that in reverse back to you, Chris, as we think about on a client services and financial, how do you expand your portfolio of capabilities when people want more advice and more different things without degrading and impacting that sense of deliverability and trust? And what's the sort of breaking point or ceiling for that? But so far, I've been able to do that myself, and I'm sure you have as well. And it's all about taking that sense of personal accountability and that sense that I'm going to deliver what I say. And I love that about, running my own company. I hope you feel the same way.
I do, absolutely. And it's interesting because your word is your bond. It's everything. My
Yeah.
reputation is everything. And so when I think about how when I earn the trust of my client, that is probably the most valuable piece of my practice. Yes, money will come and go, right? But that trust means everything to me. So I want to talk about executive decision support
Okay.
and board ready data. There's a significant part of your work. It's executive decision support, helping organizations define actionable board ready KPIs and operating rhythms that bring dashboards to life. What's missing in most nonprofits between the data they have and the decisions their boards and executives are trying to make? What does it look like when a nonprofit finally has the reporting infrastructure to make decisions with real confidence?
I'm going to make a few comments on that. And I don't know that there's one single answer because we're sort of aggregating across organizations of different size and readiness. In general, a lot of times nonprofits are still operating under operating metrics as opposed to predictive and forecasting metrics. So some of the ones that I work with are still trying to deal with, how many dollars came in the door this month versus something that maybe looks more at how many came in this month versus last year. What is our 3-year trend? What's a predictive trend line? How do we start moving towards assessing where we might be? And then also uncovering some of the details of the facts underlying the data versus kind of guessing on where the problem lies. So those are probably two of the challenges that I tend to see, Chris, is the data is presented, but is the data presented in a way that is actionable, decisionable, and informed in order to start making the difference in the organization? I'll give you an example. If I see a client who's taking a look at their annual fund performance or their major gift performance or planned giving performance, they're getting data and facts about the dollars in the door and the numbers. But if we want to make a change to that, okay, well, what change do you want? And why do you believe that's possible? Do you believe you're underperforming in planned gifts? Why is that? Because your donor population tends to be loyal and is aging, and you're not penetrating the 45 to 55 age band and getting your message out that you support planned gifts to the right group at the right time. So when it's time for their planned gifts, they can do it. And do you have an actionable opportunity on your form so that they can check a box? And then do you follow up on that form? Pick one thread, just pick one and follow it through from I'm seeing a number, I see the potential for this number to be different, and I
Uh-huh.
can follow a thread on how I might act in order to make it different. And I'm going to come back in 3 months with a consistent pattern to the team and ask them what they did differently and did it change the results. I'm kind of walking you through how that sense of organizations can see where they are but they might not be seeing why things aren't what they want, and then following through with the actions and then measuring the specific impact and change of the actions that they are taking. And that's probably where I see the gap.
Well, and also, if you just take them one at a time, you
Yep.
don't make your team crazy either.
Love that. Love that point. I mean, it's so easy to sit in a meeting and look at a whole dashboard, right, of all the operational components and say, well, I want this. Okay, that's great. Which ones of those would drive?
Mhm.
And this is kind of the conversation, Chris, I'd have about nonprofits operating as a business while fulfilling their mission for nonprofits and not changing the culture and dynamics to the
Yeah.
point that employees and donors and clients or the mission service folks start to feel that like you are a business. So run yourself like a business with efficiency, goals, and achievement, but not change the culture to where everyone sees you being a business, or you went too far, if you know what
Yeah.
I mean. But
Yeah.
that sense of looking to say, what makes the most sense for us to make an investment in change? Is it in one of our programmatic areas? Is it in events? Is it in the major donor sphere? Is it in the annual fund? Where would we see the largest impact given where we are today, as opposed to, we don't have enough volunteers, let's go get some more? We can
Yeah.
all ask ourselves that question and see room for growth, but which one pays the biggest dividend?
Absolutely. And then it gives them more breathing room to then go ahead and attack other things. So I would like to bring AI back into the conversation.
Yeah.
Your focus areas include responsible AI in a sector where AI promises significant efficiency gains for under resourced organizations, but also introduces risks most nonprofit leaders are not yet equipped to evaluate, I would imagine. So, what does responsible AI actually mean in the nonprofit technology context? And is there something a nonprofit executive or maybe a board member needs to understand about AI before their organization invests in it?
Talk for a little bit about that, and I'm going to speak through a Bill Walsh lens, not necessarily sort of an industry uh, lens, because I'm not sure there's alignment, right, on what the words responsible AI mean. I think if we talk to people of different generations,
Mm,
there might be some different language that came out and some different perspectives. My perspective is AI is coming, AI is here. AI has arrived and it's in place. So I'm not resistant or against AI. And, to a degree, I would make the debate, arguably, that we all should adapt and use it. And then it's responsible usage. And, my point of view is augmenting the human experience and empowering any given individual, whatever their job, role, or title, to achieve more on any given day than they would have otherwise without AI. And to do so in a manner that is remains human and keeps us whole, as opposed to, say, moving us down a path of less humanity. So, as an example of that, I think about, again, in the nonprofit sphere, how can we expand the capacity of prospect researchers or fundraisers or the donor pool and achieve better results from our existing donors? Where
mhm.
would we take an area of operations where AI can make a human achieve or accomplish more in a given set of time than they would have without AI, and help the organization raise more money than they would have without AI? And as a board, taking a look at that as one of the ways that you think about effective measure of spend on AI. And to a degree, I think nonprofits are well positioned for this because, I mean, Chris, imagine that some of the headlines you and I might see in the news where it's like XYZ company gets rid of its customer support staff and replaces them all with chatbots. I don't know that we could imagine a nonprofit getting away with that because they might lose that donor trust and that sense of humanity. Therefore, they are somewhat uniquely positioned to allow themselves to take a stance that says, how is AI making our employees and our staff more effective and more performant? And how is it helping us raise more money and be more effective? And they're earning trust by doing that and increasing their ability to relate to their donor population. So I don't mean it to be preachy. I just mean it's a great, great opportunity for nonprofits to almost take the social good leadership role and how AI rolls out with responsibility. Does
Well,
that
and
make sense?
also, well, yeah, in my mind, I'm separating the data that AI brings to the table from humanity's understanding of what you're really looking for. I mean, AI is not human. And so they scour and they pull all this data, but so what? And maybe sometimes it actually helps you sound better than your own writing. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a human in the loop, really directing and just thinking through what you're looking for, it could be a hot mess.
I think so. And I think we're seeing those challenges surface in the headlines every day. You know, there's
Yeah,
sort of a backtracking of the way I look at it is business, for good or for bad, approaches it as AI can replace this, and they basically try to take an AI subsystem and swap out an entire patch because that's the way business thinks. Is I will replace this department at a cost of X million with an AI system and take it out. And I just think that's just wrong thinking.
that's
I
running too
think it
fast. Yeah,
and it's easy. It's the easy path. It's the easy button. I'm going to save X dollars, and X dollars are attached to this function, this group, this job, this team, and I would look at it completely differently and said, this function has this cost and generates this output. Imagine this function with AI,
there
and
you
now the
go.
output circle it got bigger than it
That's
would
it.
have otherwise. But the people aren't gone. Otherwise, why are we here, Chris? I mean, what are we
Well,
doing?
I think you will replace some people, but you don't have to
Yes.
replace everyone for sure.
Well,
So look,
you might have been inclined to add 5 people, and instead you could add AI and 1 person,
yeah,
right? And what I would argue is that nonprofits are historically challenged by having enough resources. They
yes,
never, ever, and I know this is true for business too. I could talk to any small business owner and they would have the same challenge.
hmm,
But nonprofits are chronically stressed on resources. And so
yeah,
where can AI perform capabilities that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to meet that need, but still by making the staff more effective?
exactly. So you went from Blackbaud to an independent practice, spent a significant career inside one of the most prominent technology companies serving nonprofits, then founded IBW Solutions as an independent practice. What did the first phase of building IBW Solutions teach you about what you were actually building? And what do you know now about running an independent advisory practice that the corporate career really didn't prepare you for at all?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone who's been on this journey, but um, you don't know what you don't know. And you're basically constantly scared when you start your own company and your own business. There's that sense, I'm sure you know this. It's
I
like,
remember the days.
yeah,
Yeah.
where is my meal going to come from, next month? And I hope I'm going to have one. So, there is some financial insecurity that comes about with it. Um, but I did something a little differently than other recommendations would say, and I cast a wide net rather than a narrow, awesome net. And I tried about 5 different things. The good news for me is they all work. So I mean, I succeeded here, 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 and here, and then it became an option of which ones do I like the most, and I had the good fortune to be able to be selective. I think for many folks, that's a process that they would go through and say, which one worked, which where did I get some business that came in, and that's the one I'm going to pick. For me, I found that AI, data intelligence, and advising corporations into how to grow into the nonprofit space. Those are things that I both am good at and am finding receptivity to and enjoy. So I can kind of align that into my mission, my values, and it goes well. And I guess what I've learned is when it hums, it's really great. I mean, what a great life it offers to you when you can create your own sense of self and identity, and it's peaceful, it's calming, it makes me feel good inside to know that I'm delivering to something wonderful, and I own it I don't look at it as ownership of my business. I look at it as ownership of myself and my life. And that's the most freeing part. I guess my comment for that, Chris, is it's probably the dream that I see from young people today that kind of want it at 23. And it's like, let me just remind you, I worked for 30 years, in
Uh-huh.
corporate America, and I learned a lot. I paid my dues to get where I am. I love it if you're 23 and that's working for you. But what is it that you're investing in yourself in order to grow those skills to where this dream can come true? And sometimes I think people are lucky and they make it happen, or they're smart and they're in the right field and that happens. But other times I would suggest for some of these things, you got to work hard to get to where you want to be. I don't
Yeah,
know.
for sure. I mean, and also, I think if you jump in too soon and you don't have the benefit of other people's input as you're going along in a silo, it'd be a horrible outcome, frankly, because you're just missing so much. So I think that all of that experience that you had at Blackbaud is beyond valuable for what you bring to the table now.
It's
So,
it's been eye-opening, Chris, to,
yeah.
I was always sort of a broad sort of generalist with specialist tendencies, if that's
Mm,
even a thing. I don't know,
mhm,
almost like a Renaissance person. It's like I'm curious about everything, and that has served me well. And that's a comment I would just make for you and your audience is curiosity will take you a lot of places, because you just ask questions and you learn and you
yeah.
listen, and then you can apply that in all sorts of different ways. So that's just one thought, to share, and really just a willingness to tackle anything and everything that comes your way with that general sense of curiosity and awe and wonder. And that's what served me well. Whether that serves others, I couldn't say.
Well, we have a couple more questions to get through
Yeah.
here, and I'm looking at the time. And you're running an independent tech advisory and consulting practice, and that means managing financially complex picture, right? The project and the retainer income. That certainly varies by your engagements, the investment in thought leadership and speaking that builds the pipeline, the board and the advisory compensation alongside the consulting revenue, and the personal financial planning that often receives less attention than the client work. How do you think about your own financial architecture as the founder of IBW Solutions? And for the nonprofit technology professionals and independent consultants in your audience, what financial disciplines do you wish that you had unlocked earlier?
Oh gosh. Um, so it's a lot, and I am too diverse. So I when I was in real estate, people asked me what kind of real estate you have, and I said one of every type. Yeah, and when you ask me what do I do as IBW, I do one of everything. I'm on an advisory board for equity stake. I'm a paid owner of some others. I'm a board of some others. I take simple, pure advisory engagements and retainers on others. There's not one style, and for me, what I would say is I make sure that it aligns to my values and my ethics, and that the income stream is commensurate with what I'm doing. And that's the balance that I take, and that's the discipline that I would apply. I'm a little bit fortunate in that I've moved from a model of I need to generate infinite wealth to I will work to the capacity that makes sense for me and generate enough income to be reasonable without trying to strive to be the richest person in America. And so part of the balance, Chris, is to say, I'm going to create a world where what I do for my work and what I do for play are blended together. And where I am, I might be working, and where I am, I might be playing. And it just might flow back and forth between the two of them, but it will not be unbounded towards what I'd call sort of money for the sake of money, work for the sake of work. It has to do with fulfillment together, and that
Good for
those things
you.
can all come together. And the financial component of it is a little challenging when you have income streams coming from different places. So, is it QuickBooks? Is it Wave? Is it a professional paid advisor, an accountancy organization? What I would say is you'll reach a place, excuse me, everyone does, where you need paid advice. And I think one thing I would say to everyone is when I talk to other small business owners, they're afraid of spending money. And I'm like, why are you not paying a financial advisor? Why are you not paying a CPA? You're trying to do your own taxes and you're earning X
Yeah.
dollars. Get over it. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, Chris, that's one just key thing is get over it. Pay
Well,
for
it's
some
true.
What do you do? And what do you want to spend your time doing? And by the way, we talked about AI. I use AI. I plug into some private chats and threads. I have a CEO brain. I have a CFO brain. I have a Walsh family office brain all in my systems. And I use those to say, in the role of this voice, advise me. And if you can
Mhm.
see how I'm trying to program it, I can't afford all of those circle of advisors. I can afford to pay a CPA and an accountant and a professional advisor, but the sense of creating a world bigger than I am and using AI to help me at least start to think through where am I paying for it and where am I getting um, some AI style advice just to help me know. It's made a huge difference for me, Chris. All of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that getting pushback when you're thinking one way is so helpful, even if it does happen to come from AI. The financial picture that you described, the variety of the income stream that you have, that's very common. But it's also true that many advisors are underplanned personally. So people who actually navigate well almost always say the same thing. I treated my own financial architecture, my personal financial plan with the same rigor I brought to my clients' technology assessments. The assessment first philosophy applies to yourself too. And I pray that more people hear that. And
I
Bill,
I
this
I like that comment. Yeah.
Yeah. So this show is called Beyond the Numbers because we believe best decisions happen when money meets meaning and purpose. You've built a career and a practice in service of organizations that exist not to generate profit, but to generate impact. The for profits where technology dollar either advances the mission, dilutes or distracts it. Where does the meaning live in this work for you? And what does it look like when a non for profit finally has the operational clarity to make decisions that actually advance what it was built to do in the first place?
I love that. And I've had a bit of a privilege in working for businesses that serve nonprofits. And so I get a little bit of the best of all worlds in the sense that the kind of work I do has a direct impact on humanity. And the people that I work with are all motivated inside to serve others and to help the world become a better place. And that
Beautiful.
reflects back to me as I am working with them. And it's almost like I'm living vicariously through that, Chris. And so that's a blessing for me. And I've loved it. And
Thank you.
on the flip side, just to be very fair, by not working for a nonprofit, I work for businesses or for myself. I'm to a degree earning at the level of a business, and so I'm better compensated perhaps than if I had just gone to work for a nonprofit directly. So it's an intersection that is joyful and bountiful in the right ways. And that helps me kind of feel like I'm not just. I had a friend who left Blackbaud, for example, and went to work for a commercial company, and he's like, I'm calling on muffler shops, and it's nothing against muffler shops. We need muffler shops to service our vehicles, but the difference in selling to the muffler shop versus selling to Habitat for Humanity and knowing that the outcome of your engagement is helping them raise more money to build more housing to help those who are underserved. There's something purposeful about
Yes,
that, and I'm
absolutely.
grateful for it.
Absolutely. What you're describing, the organization that finally has the clarity and the structure to make the decisions that advance its mission rather than manage its confusion, is the experience I try to create in financial planning. The person who has the financial clarity to make decisions from a position of security and purpose, like you mentioned, rather than urgency and anxiety or just to make a buck. That clarity, whether it comes from a well configured CRM or a well built financial plan, is the whole point of both of our jobs. So,
I love
one
I
last
love
question for
I
you.
love that analogy, by the way. Yes.
Thank you. One last question. For the non for profit executives, technology leaders, and board members listening, people who know their organization has invested in platforms that are not performing, or who are about to make a significant technology decision and are not really sure they're making the right move or asking the right questions, probably. If you could give one piece of advice, just one that would make an immediate difference, what would that be?
I mean, the thing that comes to mind and, just off the top of my head is know what your investment is getting you and achieving you and set some sort of parameters around it. So if you're investing in an email tool or communications or segmented marketing or buying a new fundraising CRM and a back end, are you truly grounded on what that change is going to deliver for you? And are your teams and your staff aligned on how that might go? It
That's
can
perfect.
cost significant dollars and amounts to shift systems. Are you
Yep.
shifting because you're angry at the company for they did something, that upset you that week, and
Hmm.
it's an off the cuff decision? Or are you investing wisely in the change, following through with it, and knowing where you're going to arrive?
I
That would
love
be
that.
that would.
It's brilliant. Thanks for this fantastic conversation, Bill. And also, thank you for bringing both your 30 years of sector expertise and the genuine independence that make your work so valuable to the organizations you're serving now. So, for listeners who want to connect with IBW Solutions, maybe follow your thinking or reach out about a technology assessment, where should they go?
So my website is ibwsolutions.com, and I'm also on LinkedIn, either of those. So Bill Walsh or William G. Walsh, I believe my profile. Actually, Chris, I need to double check that. But ibwsolutions.com would be the best place.
Well, we'll get it right in the show notes. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Numbers today. If this episode made you think about whether your organization's technology investment is producing the outcomes it should, or if you recognize the adoption and data quality pattern Bill described in your own organization, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a nonprofit leader or technology advisor who needs to hear this. And remember, the assessment first philosophy Bill brings to the nonprofit technology is the same philosophy a good financial plan requires. Before recommending anything, you have to understand what the organization actually has, what it's actually trying to achieve, and where the real friction is. The answer is almost never you need a new platform. It's almost always you need a clearer picture of what you have and a plan to use it better. If you'd like to have that conversation about your own financial picture, reach out at Everett Wealth Solutions. And until next time, the best decisions always happen where money meets meaning and purpose. Be blessed.
Beyond the Numbers podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.